This is a huge conversation right now when it comes to elections. The redistricting process here in Ohio, changing those lines here in the state. Would you call our current state and Senate districts fair and proportional?
Well, the current state districts were drawn under a different set of rules, and those were those districts were drawn by the majority party, and they were done constitutionally. Certainly, they favored the people who drew the map. That's the circumstance that we've lived under. We've since amended the Constitution in the state of Ohio, and we went through that process over the course of the last week. It was very contentious. Unfortunately, it didn't end up in a bipartisan vote, which I know Governor DeWine and I were hoping for. But I do think the new constitutional rules had an impact, because ultimately, even the Republicans in the legislature conceded at least 5 House seats and a couple of Senate seats toward the goal of drawing a more balanced map. Now, I understand that there are Democrats who still don't think it was a balanced map, but this is a more Republican-leaning state than it was 10 years ago. Makes doing that a little more complicated. But even from the original map that Republicans introduced, you saw them move it more toward a Democrat goal, which shows that at least this new constitutional amendment had some impact. And we'll see if the court validates that decision. But just to give you some insight, it's very difficult. The constituencies that are influential with the Senate president and the Speaker of the House versus the minority leader and of the House and the Senate, they have very different constituencies. And what we saw in this process is that they could only go so far. Their constituencies would only allow them to go so far toward a compromise. Ultimately, we weren't able to get there, but I think that we did see that there was an impact of the constitutional change that forced Republican legislators to move a little bit more toward the middle.
Well, I think that people do often forget the job of our representatives is to speak for the people who they represent. That is a fair point. Assuming this new plan doesn't get validated by the court, is there anything specific that you would like to see if it goes back to the drawing board to redraw these districts right now?
We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what the court says. I don't know. I have no particular guess or prediction on what that will be. It's a new process. People can read the same words and come up with different conclusions. I mean, one of the things that I found from the conversation that was going on was that even outside groups and Democrats and Republicans thought their reading of the Constitution was that, okay, Democrats deserve this many seats and Republicans deserve this many seats, and that's balance. I don't think that's what we voted for. I think what we voted for was that, yes, we recognize there are going to be a certain number of Democratic seats, a certain number of Republican seats, but they wanted us to draw more competitive seats. You don't see in anybody's version of the map an attempt to create more competitive seats, which is, I think, what the voters of Ohio want more of. And I don't think either the Democratic map or the Republican map met that goal by my standard. But again, this is a collaborative process. I don't get that. I didn't have a vote, but I've been very involved in redistricting reform for more than 2 decades. And so I just offer that perspective as something that if there is a redo, I would encourage maps that have more competitive seats.
I think it would just be simpler for the people drawing the districts if they were recognizable shapes. That would
Well, you want to know what the problem is with that is that the Constitution actually says you can't break up communities to some extent. Well, city jurisdictional lines are really crazy. It's not like they're built on square or geometrical shapes that we're accustomed to. They're very jagged lines that outside, say, the city of Cincinnati, the city of Columbus, the city of Cleveland, these are very large, jagged lines that go all over the place. So when you try to keep a community together, you have to draw a district that represents that.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.